Good afternoon, everyone. This is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews, and I am your literary ambassador. And today I have a special guest on my channel. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Rebekah Pierce, and I am an author, a playwright, a teacher, mother, and businesswoman. And I'm excited to be here today to talk about my work.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, what is your genre and what attracted you to that genre?
Well, I'm a multi-genre author. I write historic fiction, I write fiction, I also write nonfiction, and I'm a playwright, so I write plays and screenplays. But my heart is primarily with theater, screenplays, of course, and historic fiction. My background is education. I'm an English teacher by trade. So I put a lot of history into pretty much any type of genre that I'm writing in.
Okay. When did you first realize you wanted to be an author?
I knew I wanted to write when I was about 15. I knew I wanted to be a writer and I knew I wanted to be a teacher. And that's primarily because my mother, I always tell the joke, I think I had a pen and a book in my hand the minute I came out of her womb, because she, gave me the love of reading very early. I remember having the strawberry shortcake books. I know I'm dating myself. I was born in 72. So I loved stories, and I used to make up stories in my head, and then I wrote my first book in the 7th grade for a book fair competition called Cool Times at Ridgemont High, and it actually placed first place in that contest. And so I've been I knew that was the gift that I had, that I could not only tell a story, but with the right teachers, I was able to create my own voice, whether I was writing nonfiction or fiction.
Okay. How long did it take you to finish your book?
Well, it depends on the book. This particular book, Belle Blue, that we're talking about, this was originally a full-length play that was performed in New York and DC, and I wrote the play in about 2009-10, and it had been performed a couple of times, and like a lot of things, life happens. I had a baby in the middle of that, my second child, and so it stayed in my computer. And then just the pandemic, one of the things the pandemic taught me was that life was teaching me this anyway, but the pandemic really brought it forward with a lot of my students losing loved ones. We lost loved ones in our family. That life is too short to leave your work in the computer. And so I decided that I would take Belle Blue and I would clean up the formatting, and I would publish it in the script form, because I'm a huge supporter of, we live in a day and time and age where anything is possible, and you could create just about anything. So I said, well, plays are stories, even though people typically, prefer to see them in person. A really good story, no matter what format it is in, people will gravitate to that. So I took the script and formatted it for a book, and here we have the story of Belle Blue.
Okay. Now tell us the title of your book and a brief synopsis.
Well, it's called Belle Blue, and it's the story of a young Black woman in rural South Virginia who only has an 8th grade education, but has really big dreams. She wants to be more than what her mother thinks Black girls are made for, and that is to just find a husband and have babies. The problem, though, is that Belle's her dreams are bigger than her patience and bigger than her abilities. And so when she thinks she's come up with a plan to get out from under her very controlling, domineering mother, who is remarried to an abusive alcoholic man who Belle despises. She had a very loving father who left her mother property. Belle she is so bothered by the fact that her mother's willing to keep her mouth shut about, what it means to be a Black woman owning property in the 70s, what it means to be a woman who owns herself. And so she creates this plan that goes totally awry, this plan to get away. And so it's a look at Belle and her best friend Patience, who has decided that she's happy being married and pregnant with baby number 4. Although the joke in the play is that she's on baby number 6. And Patience is like, no, it's number 4. But the whole point of her best friend's story is that there are some people who this is what they want. They want to be a mom with babies and a husband. And Patience has found love. That's what she wants. And Belle is the other side of being a woman, which is that no, I want to see what I'm capable of. But how do you do that when your society, when your mother, when everyone's telling you you're only meant to be this one thing, when everything in you is like, I'm meant to be more? How do you deal with that? So this is my look at mother-daughter relationships, friendships, and the individual's journey to trying to find out the possibilities of who they can be, but doing it in the wrong way.
Okay.
So it's a really heavy, it's a heavy play, but it has a lot of humor in it because, as we all learn with life, sometimes you just have to laugh at yourself. So when the play has been performed, it's a challenging play to watch when you're dealing with subject matter like domestic violence, alcoholism, marital rape, brutality. I mean, it's hard, but then when you also see love, genuine love, when you see the light bulb go off for Belle's mother, Nisi, when she realizes that, she needs to support her daughter, no matter if she understands what her daughter's dream is, to still love her through it. That's a big thing. So there's a lot in the story that I hope readers can connect with, especially, again, this is a period piece. This is set in the 70s, but this is a pivotal period in women's history, because in the 70s, we have, women coming into the workforce permanently now, and looking at what that ended up doing to the family dynamic, not only the family dynamic, but what it did to women emotionally, psychologically, and physically. And then even deeper, what did that do to Black women, particularly in the country, in the rural communities? Seeing the women in the cities moving about and creating their own, what did that look like for poor girls, for poor uneducated girls who were like, wait a minute, I want to dream too. Yeah, so that's my story.
So is this a play turned into a novel?
It is, but it's a play that is written, or it's in a play format. It's still in the play format. It's just that I put it in a book. Okay. So when you open it, you have it broken down. If you've ever seen a play script, you have character descriptions, you have a plot summary, and then you have the script. So, but it reads like a novel. And again, I'm not bragging about my own work, but I've been teaching literature for 23 years now. And the one thing that I always, push to my students is that, again, a well-written piece is gonna do its job no matter what. Mm-hmm. Right? So it doesn't matter if it's written like a play or written in paragraphs. A well-written piece with clearly defined characters, a clear plot, the climax and the resolution, that thing is going to move a reader no matter what. Okay. So it's going to be something different for readers to, again, read a play, but as a book.
Okay. Is there a way you can read a snippet from the book?
Well, it's available on Amazon. It gives you a synopsis, and of course, about the story, about what's happening, so people can read that. But this is one of 4 of my full-length plays that I'll be publishing, and unless you've seen this play or you've had, which we did as a virtual reading a couple months ago in honor of for another blog that I was interviewed for. They did a partial reading of the play. Mm-hmm. But when you go online and Amazon gives you that snippet, that's what's there. So once people buy the book, that's the only way they're going to be able to read the entire thing.
So what is your writing process like?
Well, I'm a little different. I don't have, and I've never had, I'll be 49 this year. I've never had a writing schedule. So I don't like set my clock to getting up at 5 a.m. to write or anything like that. That doesn't work for me. I'm more of an inspired writer, and that I'm connected to what I call the muse. What a lot of writers, ancient writers and old writers call the muse. And when the muse brings me a story, that's when I sit down and write it. But I don't write 2 o'clock. It's when I'm inspired. It's when I move. But if I'm writing, for an academic journal, of course, I have a deadline. So I have to make sure that I honor that deadline. So I work, I'll have an outline for that, and I'll go to work from there. And even with a lot of my stories, something like a story I'm working on now, my next book that I'm working on now, I have a generic outline for that. So I'll write to the outline, and the first draft will be very, very ugly, like it's supposed to be. And then I'll go back later and fill in the details and then give it to a beta reader. But again, I'll say, I'm going to write, my challenge today is either write for an hour or write, 1,000 words or 500 words. And that's just to keep moving, my creative juices, my brain. But I'm not a write to schedule type of writer. That works for many people. It doesn't work for me. So I'm very loose with it because I'm also teaching. Mm-hmm. So I'm reading and preparing syllabuses and grading papers. So, I have to, I do have a to-do list. So it'll be on my to-do list to get to it. So I'm that kind of writer.
Okay. How do you develop the plot and characters?
Okay. I think my strongest skill set, no matter what genre I'm writing in, is character development, dialogue. Because I'm a teacher, I'm listening all the time to students to see if they comprehend and can think and are thinking critically to be able to come up with an interpretation or an analysis of a text. So I'm always listening to people, how they talk, inflection, tone, nuances. I'm always listening for that. So to me, for characters, good writers or strong writers work on visually creating a character so that when they speak, they don't have to always put behind it, Sarah said, or he said. It should be that when you write, this character is so strong in their voice that when the reader sees the line or reads the line, they already know who that belongs to. So I'm very strong on that, and that I create characters that have voices that you can distinguish them from anybody else in the story. It's like, oh, that's such and such. I mean, that just comes from, again, being a ferocious reader, really being an English teacher. I've had the blessing of being able to read books, stories written from the beginning of time to the present. So I've had my eye on, how characters are developed, giving them, their own characteristics and their traits and their quirks, how words are either we're dropping the G or adding the G, or, we're there's a particular word maybe the character likes. So characters sometimes will come to me fully intact. I'll hear them, or they will have to be fleshed out. And what that means is you go in and you look at, which I'm sure a lot of writers on your show have said, what is the character's intention? Is this a flat character? Is this a round character? How are they moving the protagonist forward? Or how are they holding them back? What is it that they want by the end of this scene or by the end of this chapter? And how is it moving my story forward? So really, to me, you got to know your characters. Like Belle is a hard character. She's not only a hard character to read, she's a hard character to cast because she's so complex. Like, you want her to get her dream, but you are looking at her going, girlfriend, that's not going to happen. That's not a good idea. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, you're playing with dramatic irony and situational irony, and you're playing around with all that. And then when you add history to it, you gotta really make sure that you're not fudging the history, that you're true to the history, but also true to the character. And so, when you get that story idea, sit on it for a while, think about it, flesh it out, and go, okay, so how will this character navigate around this situation? How will she get what she wants, or how will she not get what she wants? But in her pursuit, it will, people who are watching her will learn from her, and they will be able to get that particular thing that the character has been wanting. So characters, people remember characters that they can connect with, and so you have to give them something to fight for, and something big to lose. Because one of the things that I talk about with a character like Belle Blue, why she's so complicated, is because historically women like Belle Blue have been decimated in literature. Any female character that attempts to reclaim or claim an identity for herself, or tries to acquire that which belongs to her, like property or the rights of something, her body or whatever, whatever it is, in literature, Black and white, American literature and African American lit, she has been destroyed. The writer has determined that she shall lose everything for attempting that. And so even when you're looking at this character, when you're reading Belle, I'm not going to tell the end, but there's a price that she pays for what she wants. But what I did was I vindicated her in a way through her mother, because I'm tired of seeing women destroyed for trying to be the best that they can be. And so when you're writing characters like that, you have to think about all the other characters and how their actions are going to affect that character, and how that character's actions are going to affect everyone else. And then even more so, how's it going to affect the reader? Because readers are used to women losing out. They're used to that, and they want the fantasy ending of the woman getting the man and getting everything she wants. Well, that's not real life, first and foremost. But secondly, I'm not a tidy up, happy ending writer.
Okay.
I'm not.
How do you come up with the titles?
The titles, one of the things I always teach my students is your titles, you must create your own title, and it must be a title that has something to do with your story. And so sometimes the title can come from a line that a character says, or, it could be the character's name, like Belle Blue. This is one of two works that I have where the character's name is in the title. And that is to purposely make you see that this is about a woman. This is a woman's story. But titles are so important. You need to really be careful, because, they can be misleading, and it needs to reflect clearly, what the intention is of the work. So I don't think I focus on titles until the end. Sometimes it's given to me in the beginning. Sometimes it's not. But once you get to the stage where you have to figure out your title, it should connect to the story. It should have everything to do with the story. And and if that means you got to go through your draft and just look at stuff, or look at a scene, or look at a description and go, oh, that's the title right there. That's what you need to do.
Okay. What is the most difficult part about writing for you?
Letting go of the editing. Because I teach writing, it's like I have to stop myself from correcting my drafts. Like when I'm writing the first draft, for those who are listening, there's a great, one of my favorite essays or articles to teach writing students is Amy Lamont's A Shitty First Draft. Because Lamont talks about how even, well-received, award-winning authors, everybody struggles with the first draft. And one of the things they struggle with is the fact that the first draft is not supposed to be perfect. So when I'm working on the first draft, one of my biggest struggles is do not go back and correct the spelling of that word. Do not go back and put that comma in there, right? Because my world is teaching composition, right? And so it's hard for me whether I'm kind of an old school writer and then I still write my stories on a notepad first and then go back and type up the story when I'm done. Right? And so I mean, it's hard not to go back and cross out, put the right spelling. And then even when I finally go to type it, to not spend the time going back to correct, I'm like, this is supposed to be crappy looking, first of all. Do not go back and fix this. Just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. So for me, that's the hard part because I want to correct it so bad.
What is the most important elements of good writing?
You said, what is the most important element?
Of good writing? Yes.
Okay, so the most important element of good writing, there are, and again, coming from an educational background, I teach my students, there are 5, it's called the rhetorical situations. There are 5. The first one is understanding the purpose of the work. Is it to entertain? Is it to persuade? Is it to inform? You got to know why you're doing what you're doing. And you need to ask yourself, because with each one of those comes a different writing style. With each one of those comes a different voice and a different set of responsibilities. So you have to be clear on your purpose. The second thing, once you figure out your purpose, who's your audience? Who am I writing to? What do I want them to do with this work after they've read it? What do I want them to feel? That's important because a lot of people forget that you're not writing to everybody. And when I have editing clients, when I ask them who's the audience for the book, when we first start, they always say, it's a book for everyone. No, it's not. Everyone's not reading this book. So you need to be very clear on who the audience is. Who are you writing to? And what do they know about your topic that, you could spin it in another way? Because here's the thing, there's nothing new written under the sun. Everything's been rewritten. The trick is to write it in a way now that no one's ever heard it spun before, or to answer a deeper question that people may have, briefly touched upon, right? So who is this audience to whom you're writing? What do they want from you? And then the third thing is, once you figure that out, what is the format or the genre that you're going to put this conversation in? So am I going to write it as a play? Am I going to write it as a novel? Is it going to be a short story? Is it going to be a screenplay? Is it going to be a novella? Is it going to be a poem? What is the format that this conversation that I'm about to have with this audience, what is it going to look like? Because even with that, there's a difference between writing a novel and writing a play. Very different. And so you have to be very clear on what this story is going to go in. And then once you've figured out the format, the fourth thing is, what is your position or your stance on the subject matter? Readers don't like wishy-washy writers. If it's not clear from the first page or even in the middle of the book what the character wants, aka what the author wants, then no one's going to buy the book. So you've got to be very clear on what is your position on whatever it is that you're discussing, right? So it doesn't matter if it's fiction. You still have to have a clear stance for that character. Who is this character, right? And then finally, you have to have a clear message or thesis, is what I teach my writing students when we're doing academic writing. What's the running theme of this work? And again, how do you connect that to your readers, to your audience? How do you make them want to come on board with this conversation and go for the ride with you? So for me, it's writers really sitting down and understanding the art of writing. You must know these 5 situations, these rhetorical situations, even though you may not have had the term, presented to you in that way. Understanding your purpose, your audience, your genre, your position, and your thesis. And then the second thing I think writers need to, an editor.
Yes.
I learned that the hard way. I cannot edit my own stuff. And so it is so important to hire a professional editor. Your money needs to go to two places, an editor and a book cover designer. I cannot stress that more than anything. Again, depending on the type of work you're trying to put out, to the type of audience you're trying to get, that cover is everything. So even if it's simplistic, like my cover is very simplistic, it still needs to be clean. It still needs to be clean. And so those things are very important. My students, they gravitate, and myself, I gravitate to stories that are clean. The character has a clear objective. And I can hear that character without them even being described to me or told who it was. And the plot is feasible. With the exception perhaps of science fiction and fantasy, if you're writing standard fiction, the plot needs to be something that is possible or plausible, not something that makes you go, oh, hell no, that ain't even possible, right? Again, know your genres, right? You can break the rules, but break them within reason.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. What are you currently working on right now?
So I'm working on both a fiction piece and a nonfiction piece. And the nonfiction piece, I'm continuing my analysis of Black faces in spaces. I'm looking at what is the use of rhetoric or language in the Black literary world, in Black literature and in Black theater. And I'm looking at how politics, economics, and race shapes the way in which we tell our stories, how we build those stories. So, of course, I'm, going back to the Harlem Renaissance writers, the Black arts movement, which is the writers of the 60s and 70s. And then the current writers are looking at how our language has shifted with the politics, the economic politics and racial tension in this country. So that's the academic side of me that I'm working on. The fiction side, there is a story that's been in my head for almost 14 years that I'm finally getting out. And it's a fantasy historic fiction novel. And it's called Captain Jack. And it's the story of a Haitian French female pirate in late 18th century Haiti, which is so ironic because of what is going on in Haiti right now. But I've always wanted to tell this story of, women in that world of piracy. We don't know of a lot of women that were present. We do know of some, hardly any Black women. There is one that is very vague about her in history. I've been researching her. There's not a lot on her, but I want to tell the story of this Haitian French woman coming out of Haiti, coming out of Toussaint Louverture's Haiti in 1791, and how she ends up as a pirate. And for her, what her mission is, she despises slave owners. And so she makes it her mission to, whenever she comes across a ship, if it's got slaves on it, she is determined to find a way to free them, and especially if it's women. And so she's a very interesting character. She has a very high moral standard, but of course, there's always a price to pay for that. So I'm working. So that's the next book that I'll be releasing pre-orders for next week. In fact, for my Captain Jack fantasy historic fiction novel.
Where can your readers find you and your books?
Well, just Google my name. I mean, I'm out there. I'm on all the social media platforms, with the exception probably of Snappy Chat, because I can't get with the Snappy Chat. But I'm on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Right, I cannot do the Snapchat. So you just Google my name, Rebekah, with the K-A-H, Pierce, Rebekah L. or Rebekah Lynn Pierce, and it'll take you to my website, which is under my name. My company is RLP Productions. So if you find me out there on that, we focus on movies and publishing, and theater, of course. And my entrance now into the world of cooking. I'm a baker, and a lot of people say, well, how do you write and bake? Well, they're both art. It's a form of art. They're both ways of telling a story, especially telling the story of love, and the story of Black cooking. in America. So they just Google my name. It'll take you to my work on Amazon. Put my name in there. I have several historic fiction pieces out there, as well as nonfiction work out there. So just my answer nowadays is just Google me.
Do you want to play a game? Play a game called My Favorites?
Sure.
Okay. What is your favorite snack while writing?
My favorite snack while writing. Okay, it's messy, but sometimes a bag of chips, but mostly a latte.
Okay.
I would probably say that, yeah.
What is your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue. What is your favorite food to eat?
Mexican.
Wow.
I'm from California. You know it's got to be Mexican.
What is your favorite genre to read?
Oh wow, mystery novels. I love mysteries.
Okay. And who is the author you most admire in your genre?
Well, you know, I'm in multiple genres. So for theater, of course, it's a tie between August Wilson and William Shakespeare. The two different spectrums of storytelling, yes. Right? Mm-hmm. In fiction, I mean, right now I am a huge, first of all, Walter Mosley in fiction, definitely, but I would have to say my favorite writers right now are Alexander McCall Smith, the #1 Ladies Detective series, and Janet Ivanovich. I love the Stephanie Plum series. She cracks me up. But I grew up with Agatha Christie. So she is like the #1 big dog for mystery writing.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for coming in today.
Yeah, Agatha Christie. You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. This is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews. Happy reading. Bye, y'all.
Bye.